One thing that comes to mind when I think about the Brexit referendum, or even some of the political discourse that we've seen as part of the US presidential election, is this idea there's clearly a bit of a pushback on globalization. And globalization is a term that I think of as referring to integration across countries in essentially three types of markets: the markets for capital, for goods, and for labor, for workers, for people. And I think it's very easy for people in my generation or my students to take for granted the idea that the world is becoming more and more globalized over time. In our lifetimes, there's been essentially no real reversals in these patterns. We've seen more and more trade in goods relative to GDP. We've seen more and more trade in assets relative to GDP and in workers crossing borders. But you can take for granted that, that this has to be that way. In fact, if you go back to, let's say, the late 19th century, even the early 20th century, this was a period in which the world was also globalizing quite rapidly. But sure enough, the interwar period from about 1914 to 1944 or so, 1945 or so, is a period. It had two world wars and a Great Depression, and it's a period in which globalization actually reversed, where you saw a collapse of international capital flows. You saw a collapse of goods trade relative to GDP. I don't think it's as well documented, but presumably a major reduction in the flow of workers across countries. It's also the case, and has always been the case, that globalization, while on average people like me believe that they make the world better off, they certainly don't have to help everyone. There are some people that gain and some people that may lose. It's obviously become more and more important for us to make sure that the benefits are shared by a broader set of people than perhaps has been the case in some places recently.